Coming up, we say goodbye to the Locked On Nets podcast, but remind everybody that the future remains bright in Brooklyn. We dive in coming up next.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, my friends, it is the Locked On Nets podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. He's Doug Norrie. I'm Adam Armbrecht. We thank you, as always, for making us your first listen of the day. We're 100% free on all those great platforms. And Doug, hey, let's take a spin around the live block over on YouTube as we close out our, I'm going to call, reign of supremacy on the Locked On Nets podcast.
Yeah, like 5 years, been a really fun run. Final episode, Eric Slater going to be taking over the mantle here, taking over the feed starting Monday. I know you had an episode with him earlier, had Eric on the show a few times over the years. I just knocked my microphone off in our final episode. I got to tell you something right now. I actually went to change my microphone right now. And you're going to hear it right away. And I just did something that I've never done. I've never knocked this mic over, I don't think, in all the years that we've been podcasting. So save the worst for last, as always, with with this stuff. But Eric taking over the podcast on Monday. Really, really good hands from just everything from high-level basketball analysis to just energy around Nets fandom, which, look, we've been doing the podcast for a lot of years, and we've seen a lot of folks come and go, right? This is, it's a labor of love when you talk about a team every single day or write about a team or whatever it is. And, Eric's one of the guys that's kind of been around the space longer than most at this point. And so really cool to have him stepping in, taking over the feed. But we'll roll out live on YouTube today. We'll talk about our predictions for the future of the Nets and kind of land this plane after half a decade, maybe more than count the podcast before we were doing this before. More than half a decade of podcasting about the Nets. So good run. Want to go out with on a high note, I think.
Yeah, we'll probably get there in the end, I think. That's why you do a live and you give yourself a little bit extra time. Somewhere in here. Remember, go back a couple episodes. Doug, he said I made the most poignant statement that I've ever made in my podcasting career. So savor that. Regardless of what happens here today, remember that there was a time when I totally knocked it out of the park. Hey, listen, by the way, we'll throw up a couple of these, move along. We're going to talk about Rafael Barlow's big board because it's a very enticing one if you're a Brooklyn Nets fan. But we'll also do this because a big part of it is about you guys. We did these 2 seasons ago. We're doing post-game lives, everyone getting in on the chat. How about Rai 423? Used to drive to Philly and back at midnight for a big brown delivery company. We can all fill in the blank there on that one. You guys were a frequent passenger. Respect for all the hard work and good luck in what's next. We're going to do, well, you know why we're going to show a lot of these comments tonight? Because they feel like they're all going to be similar to that. And by the way, feel free to throw in the negatives ones too. We'll pop them up there as well. As we talk about, we might as well do something that resembles an organized structure here for the podcast. As we think about the draft next month, Eric did mention that he's 26, and by the time he's 30, maybe the team will be pretty good by then. I felt really insulted as I approached my 40th birthday later this year. But when we look at Barlow's big board, man, I will say we're seeing some things in and around his prospect rankings that should be really exciting for the Brooklyn Nets. Specifically, when you get there at 8, he does have Noah Senge there. A lot of fans have come around on him. At 19, how about Cedric Coward still being there in that kind of slot for the range of where he could go potentially? Down at 26 and 27, we're talking Hugo Gonzalez and Walter Clayton Jr. Pretty enticing if we could just take that big board, put it in our pocket, and call that the draft for Brooklyn next month.
Yeah, I opened up the big board and I was like, I know, because Rafael he's awesome for for starters. You go NBA big board and just go follow that over on Substack. It's one of the best follows around. Also, the part where he's not really like mocking these guys to the Nets. He's just going what his big board is, but that's okay because we'll take what his big board is and just slot it into the Nets. And I feel like because we're going to talk a lot about sort of future predictions for the Nets as we go here. And I'm reading some of these comments from YouTube while I'm trying to talk at the same time. I'm having difficulty. I gotta sort of section my brain here. I gotta say what I'm gonna say and then I'll go back and read the comments. But as we talk about what the future looks like and sort of what we make some predictions about what it's gonna be, if we just start here from the way that this board shakes out, I mean, would you take this board again? It's like the way he rounds it out is a Senge at 8, Coward at 19, Hugo Gonzalez at 26, and
And Walter Clayton Jr. 27. I would take that draft in a freaking heartbeat. Like, that would be the one, too, where I would be like, I'm not saying we're coming back onto the feed, but I'd be like, oh, that's going to be a fun season to watch him Nets basketball, because there'd be a lot of upside to that group. Maybe not as much with Clayton, but with the other three, those are guys you could like dream on for a few years and sort of like tell yourself a nice story of like where the team could be in a few years, just going straight upside across the board.
And what's kind of nice about that too, in this version of it, which again, we'll take to the bank, hand it over to Adam Silver, go ahead and lock it in, is like with Gonzalez, you're talking about a player that's only, 19 and a half at the time of the draft, right? We know with Noah Senge at the top there at 8, he's just barely 19 years old. So you have a really long runway there potentially. But then if you think about going into the two other players there in Coward, who we know he's on the older side, obviously, but still this enticing skill set and the comps that you're getting from players past. And then even in Walter Clayton Jr., like you said, he's 22 years old, like a full senior. He'll be over 22 at the time of the draft. But there's something about where those guys would slot in for the Brooklyn Nets, right? Walter Clayton Jr. as a prospect is great. It's hard to put your head in the space for Brooklyn saying, well, what about 2 years from now when he's going to be almost 25 years old by the end of the NBA season, right? That feels harder. But to have two guys that maybe feel like if they come in and they hit right away, you're going to get that kind of impact first rookie season excitement. And then these other two players that hopefully you get a taste. And by the end of year 2, we're talking about guys that are in the rotations, guys that are in starting roles, right? And guys, especially in Senge, if you're taking them at 8, that represent cornerstone pieces to the future of the organization.
Yeah, I think and that's like the thing I think Nets fans probably need to hope for the most is that this team, I think one thing that we've been talking about for a while now, I mean, for sure since the Bridges trade, and kind of even before that too, because we kind of wanted the team to go in this direction, was that we kind of knew when the KD, Kyrie, and Harden, experiment / almost there blows up, we said at the time, we're like, this could take a long time. Like, you just don't really pivot back into being great after taking a big swing and then sort of missing. And we kind of always knew that the timeline was going to be long. I think that the organization sometimes has wanted to signal that it's not going to be as long, or like they wanted to wait, they maybe see if they could be as part of conversations. Like if you think about Donovan Mitchell's getting rumored here forever. And then Giannis obviously now is rumored at times, although that seems to have really, really cooled off. And so I think from that standpoint, my view of this hasn't changed that much, is that like, hey, look, they went for it. They were the title favorites. It didn't work out. It imploded and exploded in like the most sort of like unbelievable way. And when that happens, it's just going to take a long time to sort of get yourself back to relevancy. And I think we're just at that point right now. They're still at the very beginning of this. And I know there's going to be fans that don't want to hear that. And there's going to be fans that just kind of want it to be something else. And like, to quote Marlo from The Wire, you want it to be one way, but it's the other, right? Like, it's just like, this is going to take years and years and years. Like, it's just not going to be a fast thing. But I think if they start the draft with something like how Barlow's board shakes out, go through another season of pain, get even a little luck on the lottery side, and maybe even not, and just like have a good, strong draft. They have to sit on all these picks and just maybe take them all. Like, something good will come out of it. It's just not going to be next year. Right? Like, and it's honestly probably not going to be the year after that either. And that's okay. It's okay. Like, this stuff takes a while, and I don't know, Nets fans probably don't want to wait anymore. It's been kind of a rough run here for decades and decades, but that's just kind of the nature of how you kind of put these things back together. So I think they're in the right place, but I just don't expect it to happen quick.
And by the way, man, that's why you do not go where the path may lead, but instead go where there is no path and leave a trail. That's Ralph Waldo Emerson. We're just going to go ahead, tie some pretty little bows on top of some of our all-time greats as we wrap up our time here. By the way, though, you want to have a pivot point back onto the podcast? Maybe it is Henry Hall. Maybe it is. You both need to come back if we get Dylan. Hope for Harper. That's a nice hashtag to spread around. Also, it's not going to happen. So while we love you, Henry, and we certainly appreciate you coming in, that was one of the things that I know that narrative bubbles up, but it just seems like that's so far down the list of possible outcomes here as the draft approaches, the Nets getting up that board and landing one of those guys. And frankly, Barlow's board is a good reason to not be as attached to that narrative, right? Because they're all other players. We say if it goes chalk with the way he's ranked them, I'd be really excited about it. And I think one of the hardest things if you're a fan is to sit here and know that you missed out on the top picks, maybe know that maybe your organization didn't do everything they could last season to tank as hard as possible, and then still remind yourself that come October, even September, come summer and summer league, like you're going to start seeing all these guys play. Like you're going to start seeing all these dudes playing with one another. You may see a Noah Senge on the same court as Dylan Harper in summer league at some point and go, oh my God, whatever. He tried to chase down block, right? Whatever it may be. And that kind of stuff can get you excited for the long season ahead. And certainly, as you mentioned, maybe like a long couple seasons. Like it's okay. I think, and by the way, there's one other thing that I have noticed as we've been watching fans react to everything. At the time they got 8th, it was like this crap organization. They've ruined everything. They'll never get it right. It's all over. I would say that since then, there has been like a calming of the storm around the fan base. Sure. And coming back to what we're talking about, right? Like 4 first-round picks. Maybe they'll condense a couple of those later ones. But there does seem to be like a settling into, right, it's a deep draft class. There's a lot of talented players. Like, let's see what we get here. And then they'll start freaking out if it's not the picks that they wanted or the guys that they thought they should have taken.
Well, I think one thing that's really helped the Nets, like, and from like an optics standpoint on that, is that there's no true consensus after 2. And so now I think the Sean Marks would still give a lot to draft 3 and not 8. Okay. Just like, so I don't want to, let's not fool ourselves.
And by the way, here too, one thing about Barlow's board in terms of just rankings, so this has come up, and some people have done these projections where VJ Edgecombe does not go 4th overall. On his board right now, he has Jeremiah Fears at 4, Trey Johnson at 5, and then it's Edgecombe at 6. So then you start to have different conversations about what teams are picking where, and if it's automatically going to go chalk with the way boards are laid out. But we said this before, Fears and Johnson have definitely been the names inside of that top group that have pushed as close as you can to cracking the top 3 here when we're still weeks away from the draft.
And you're right. So I think like with that, I think it's easier for fans to look at this and be like, in some drafts, it's like, hey, there's a clear top 4, right? Or there's a clear top 5, but we know exactly. And then there's the drop off of the tier right after that. And you like can just see it happen. And you're like, ugh, like there's just this guy. Now it doesn't always play out like that in terms of who's great, but I'm just like, when you go into the draft, you usually have these things tiered out. What's helping Nets fans, I think, and it's a healthy dose of copium, but it's also true, is that because there is a lot of like just sort of malleability around after pick, I'll say ace is 3 and that's pretty much set. But then like after 3, even if you say VJ Edgecombe's 4, I don't think people see those guys as like light years above the next group. And so drafting at 8, again, they would rather draft 3. So believe me. So it's not that. But because there's no real consensus, because it's really just kind of there's a push and pull around who's going to be there, and you kind of at this point at 8 know you're getting someone that people like. Because I think the group, like having just straw polled this forever on Twitter and just read this, there's a group of fans that like Fears, that like Trey Johnson, that like VJ, he's not going to fall that far, that like Maliwatch, that like Noah Senge, that like Han Knipple. That's enough. One of those guys is getting to 8. Right. Like that's so, a guy that people like is getting to 8. And because there's so much,
I know a guy that knows a
just
guy,
sort of, I know a guy that knows a guy because it's just been shifted around so much. I think Nets fans feel good about we're not going to be left out in the cold on someone with like a real talent, and no one can seem to decide what the order is anyway. So at that point, if no one can decide what the order is, then we'll just take whoever's left and feel okay about it. And maybe they're going to be choosing between Noah Senge and Knipple, and then Nets fans can just go crazy about that, about what the right, and then they'll draft Queen, and then we're all upset. But but overall, I think we're just looking at a situation where the sting is off of it because there's so much fluidity around the board right now, and with that fluidity comes there's no FOMO from Nets fans now because they know one of these guys is going to get there, and maybe it actually becomes the decision becomes easier because it's like all the other teams made the decision for you, right? Like everyone else made the decision for you, and you just take the last guy that's kind of left at that tier where that basically does drop off at 8 or 9.
Yeah, the one other thing too that I was thinking about here, as we have something glitch out in the background, we always got to have those things occur for us. Was this idea here too? I agree with everything you're saying, but as we bring in the fans here, as we do our final lap around the circuit, when you have someone like come in and say like Charlotte willing to trade down for the right price, I keep asking, what is the right price? I don't know if this will ever matter for the Brooklyn Nets, specifically at 8 in the top of the draft, maybe not. But around those other picks, like I think this is the question, underlined, right? Like, what is the right price? Is it Cam Johnson? Is it Cam Johnson and pick 26? I'm not talking about getting from 8 to 6 or something, but like to get from 19 to 15, right? Use Barlow's board again here. Igor Demon, if you like him, yeah, he's certainly higher up now. He's at 11. But what I find actually another guy that we could talk about that we mentioned before in Rasheer Fleming, who lives there right at 15, right? So he's sitting there now. He was in the mid 20s and he still is on some boards, but Barlow has him 15. So if you're talking about trying to move up, I don't care where it is on the board. The question becomes like, what is the asking price here? And I think you were right on this when we were coming into the draft discussion about if you look at how deep the class is, it makes it harder to think about teams really moving up a ton, but then also the exchange rate on these picks. Because if Brooklyn or any team says, oh, we'd love to get from 26 to 20, and we talked about this the other day, right? Well, they'll want to do that and they'll be willing to package picks, but they'll also tell the team they talk to, and you guys are going to get some great players back here, right? Like, so there's hard. I think there's like a hard dynamic of being willing to package up assets and then also feeling like if you didn't move at all, you'd get a great player at 26 or 27. You get a great player at 19 instead of 15. I think that that's a hard equation for any team, let alone the Brooklyn Nets.
I think it is. I would not package picks in this draft to move up. I don't think, unless I could get to like 2, and then, but I don't think that's happening. So at that point,
the curtain, right? This is a fun one because I'll throw it out here for you. I made a mock trade in the network because I close things out. I said, Eric Slater, you deal with the fallout from everything every decision that I made inside of this circle. But the Thunder came calling for Cam Johnson, and regardless of all the details, the Nets ended up getting the 15th pick out of that exchange. If there's a version of that, God, I would swing hard as hell to get my pen to paper and sign off on that. I don't know if that was hubris by Ryland, who's a great guy and does great content coverage, or if it would feel like the Thunder potentially coming off a championship are like, and then we add Cam Johnson and we go right back to the well again to have a chance to go back to back. Like that's an interesting dynamic with a team that has that pick in the middle because of a different exchange rate. That's not their own. They're getting that because of all the moves they made previously.
Yeah, I mean, I'd do that in a second. I would I would move up in this draft if I thought like they could package like one of these like later picks that they have in the future that like maybe even not though, because those Knicks picks, I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, we're recording this final episode before the Knicks game, so yeah, I don't know if the Knicks are still going to be in this by the time we're done with this, or
the Pacers are going to advance to the finals. Yeah, got it.
By the way, if I was the Knicks, I wouldn't even do anything different. I would just, if you make the Eastern Conference Finals, the East is going to be a wreck next year again. I wouldn't change anything. I would just roll it back. I'd run it back in a second. Like these teams sometimes.
So the way that gets talked about. You only made the Eastern Conference Finals back-to-back years. What do we need to change? Like, well, you made the Eastern Conference Finals back-to-back years. Like, maybe just figure some things out to execute better, right? Like,
you're almost for sure not going to get like the thing that you need. I'm short of like getting Giannis or something like that. I would just run like you're right at the doorstep. They were in some of these games like that. They should have probably won game 1. The Halliburton thing was so kind of lucky right at the end. Like it's like these fractional kind of things, these inches, these millimeters that just changed these directions. If I was the Knicks, I would run it back. But anyway, so if I was packaging this stuff, I'd only want to package. I wouldn't want to package. I would just like want to use something from the future, from another draft to maybe just get another pick in this draft. I'm in love with this draft. Like I'm absolutely in love with this draft. And like
I've convinced myself on no less than 15 to 17 players. I'm like, these are great. They're all great. I'll take them everywhere.
Yeah, I just think they're all good. And like, there's just so many guys to choose from here. The next year's draft's very top heavy. I don't know if it's going to be as deep as this one. I would just want to have as many picks as I could. If I could trade something to get another pick in this draft, I would definitely just do it, but not give anything else up here. I think that's kind of like what's going on with this. I just wouldn't. I wouldn't want to seed anything from this draft in order to package and consolidate to move up, unless it was okay. It's not going to be Cooper Flag, unless it was Dylan Harper, and we've just been on record many times saying that we don't think that's possible. So yeah. I just don't see it happening. Otherwise, I think they stick. I think they know they just need such an influx of talent. They have no talent. They've actually right now have no players. Like they have 2 players. What do they have? 3 players in their contract. Who do they have? How many players do they have in their contract now? 3.
Yeah, they're down. Actually, we should pull that up right now in the background here because
They have Claxton and Cameron Johnson under contract. I mean, sorry, I wasn't counting the rookie. They have Clowney and Whitehead, obviously, and that's like pretty much it. They got the player option, a team option on Jalen Wilson, which I think they're going to pick up, but I don't know if it's totally guaranteed. And then it's like Tyrese Martin, Drew Timme, and that's it. Like they have nobody on the team, and they'll probably end up signing Cam Thomas. My guess is they re-sign Daron Sharp. I'm thinking they'll probably take on someone's bad money in the offseason, like at least one player worth of bad contract that another team is just trying to get off of, or just like try to facilitate something across the league. They have like no players. These rookies they're going to draft are all going to get to play. Like they just don't. Everyone is kind of like transplanted. Some like D'Lo not under contract. Melton, I mean he wasn't really on the team anyway. Zaire Williams, they haven't signed him. I think they will. We're waiting on Cam Thomas. We're waiting on Daron Sharp. No idea on Watford. Like some of these guys will probably come back, but they have like no money on the books right now. They have $63.5 million on the books right now. That's just like nothing.
Yes.
So there's just gonna be opportunities for these guys to play.
There's 9 guys that aren't under contract for next season that were on the roster this past year. And the bulk of them, outside of getting down like into the Reese Beekmans of the world, like were playing, right? They were playing for the Brooklyn Nets. And you mentioned it too. This is why we were talking with some guys on the network, especially around, hey, like just to, for content and discussion. Oh, would the Nets be interested in doing this? Will they trade up for X? And it was like, oh, what are you going to do with all those picks? Like nobody, I think it was actually Jackson Gatlin who popped in earlier and then, threw a little snide comment in as he's one to do. But he's like, yeah, because you can't play all those. You can't, there's not enough minutes for all these guys. I was like, oh, there's plenty of minutes. The Brooklyn Nets have nothing but minutes when it comes to bring in. They could bring in all 4 of those draft picks. They turn around and say, even they didn't trade anybody else, Cam Johnson or otherwise. You mentioned, you did the rundown. I mean, listen, Daron Sharp, even if they bring him back, he's still a guy that comes off the bench and plays about 15, 20 minutes for you. It's not like he's coming in and giving you 25 to 30. We've had that discussion before. Nicholas Claxton still under contract. Obviously, he's been a starter for the Brooklyn Nets, but we constantly talk about how he'd be better suited if it wasn't that type of role. He'd be better suited if you had a traditional center that could play on the court and maybe expand the range a little bit beyond the arc. So, Dariq Whitehead, hey, we're excited about him. He put some good film on tape at the end of the year. But it's not like you're going to come in the door being like, and put him in for 2025. So the Nets could not only draft all 4 first-round picks, they could also get their second-round pick, bring him in here, and all those guys can be in the rotation. It's why you go back to a couple episodes ago when we talked about what are the Brooklyn, why is this such an embraceable moment for the fan base and the organization alike? Because they can sell you on the fact that you're going to see all of these young players play. It's not like other organizations or years past where, okay, take your time on the developmental track. He'll start in the G League. I mean, maybe they choose to do that. I think it would be insane because there's no reason not to put a Senge out there. He's playing professional ball right now in Germany. Like there's no hurdle to get over here. And there's nobody on the roster that you'd say, well, this player is more deserving of minutes. No, roll the balls out on the court and see what happens. And that would be the most exciting version of things. Although, can I just divert this thing real quick here? Because there's nothing I would like more. Larry just brought it up. Larry, you sick SOB. Quentin Grimes is a restricted free agent. And I'm just going to say, if you got to put some money on the books, we can finally bring our boy home from so many drafts ago, which Doug and I called him out. We dreamed on him, and now he's moved around the league a little bit, but he is shaped up into an excellent player. Feel free to cherry pick any of the 6,000 thoughts I just put out.
Do we like him in that draft? I remember saying in the draft he was just going to be only 3-and-D, right? I think that was my take on him at the time. I never thought he would turn into... I must have been the guy that knew all along.
I
thought he was like NBA ready, but I never thought he was going to be like an on-ball scorer. By the way, nobody did because Dallas never would have traded him.
Like I remember liking him in the draft as he was described as a 3-and-D wing. I like this prospect, not as, oh my God, this guy's going to be a 22-point scorer like every night of the game. Oh wow, I didn't realize that was coming in.
I do think we're going to see the Nets probably tender offer sheets to a couple of these guys. I wouldn't be surprised to see a Kuminga sheet go out by them and just see if Golden State wants to call it or something like that. As someone mentioned, Naz Reid. I mean, maybe. The thing about a lot of these guys, Kuminga is a little different because he's younger. Some of these guys aren't going to fit a timeline, and it's going to be you don't want to go crazy with this money. You kind of want to take distressed money and then be able to attach assets to it. I don't think I would go overboard with trying to do any free agent stuff because I just don't really know what that gets them. I just maybe slightly more watchable, but none of these guys are going to be on the timeline. Someone on Twitter said something hilarious to me, and I just not going to be able to find it to say who it was, but it was like the Nets are. It was about packaging picks or something like that, and then he was like, the Nets, or he or she, I'm gonna assume it was he, was like, the Nets aren't going to do that because if they hit on all four of their guys, they're going to be all extension eligible at the same time. And I'm like, homeboy, if that happened, I mean, talk about the problem
scenario in the world. Oh no, too many talented players.
Well, I don't want to win the lottery. I don't want to win the lottery because I won't be able to choose what car I'll buy, and then my garage won't be big enough. I'll have to buy a bigger garage for all the cars I'm going to buy. I was like, oh my God, of all the problems that we could come up. By the way, you know me. I can come up with nothing but problems. Start now, and I'll start coming up with problems about what problems that either are realistic or problems that are unrealistic. But the part where they don't want to keep all their draft picks because they're going to just absolutely just go, flop turn river and just nail every single thing.
Great. Now I won the pot. Fantastic.
It was great. I like 2% off. It's like all the guys we get are just going to be super max eligible or whatever by the time they come around, and Nets are going to have a problem. It's like, I mean, sign me up for that kind of problem. So in the old Nets fans and maybe all sports fans can always find a downside with everything. Like the downside of them nailing all four of their picks was all extension eligible at 5 years from now or whatever. And that's just going to be a problem. So anyway, thought that was a fun one as we head out the door.
Of course it is. But that's, by the way, shout out to My Holy King, who's been a frequent flyer with us here. Jonathan, who was in here before we even got started. Obviously appreciate everybody showing up or just saying hey and hanging out for a little bit and getting excited, obviously, for Eric Slater. We'll throw this in the mix here as we do a very loosely structured final episode. He'll be taking things over starting Monday. We said this all leading up to the end of our time. This feed does not stop. And if you think the network was going to give a grace period before they got the next host in, of course not. So be sure to tune in for that. You mentioned it there, though. So there's two things. The idea, there's just never a version that guy or gal that you just referenced. There's never satisfaction. There's never, you could say, we signed Kyrie Irving, and then we got Kevin Durant, and then we got James Harden. And they'd be like, yeah, but we don't have a true center. So what's it gonna matter? Injuries otherwise. They trade him away. They recoup all these assets. They traded Mikal Bridges for 5 first-round picks. I'm sure they did, but look at them over there on New York now. Those are the fans, and you get to be a fan however you want. So no, Sue. I like doing that right now. I read that as Sue. No podcast.
I was trying to click this one. And the thing kept moving, and I just couldn't do it. But no, this is the one. No, and Larry says this perfectly. And if you're on the podcast feed, it's like saying if I win the lottery, I don't want to pay the taxes. This was the comp. I should have used this one on the lottery one and not my one. So congrats to Larry for coming up in the moment. The better thing, right? Like what you're saying, it's like, I'm gonna have to pay the taxes. It's like, boo freaking who? 40% capital gains on your 24 million. Like, okay, right. I think you'll live. So whatever.
Oh my God, it's so good. And by the way, it's like Boston is actually Boston be a great example of this, right? Oh no, you drafted players and then paid the max contracts and then also ended up trading for really talented players and then signed really talented players. And now they changed the way the money works and you're screwed. Okay. And you won championship and you're one of the best teams in the league. And there's worse ways when your cuppeth overflow to find things to complain about. One thing I will note quickly here. I think I said 2 things before. I only said 1. I'll say 2 things now, but I will say 2. First of all, sometimes you're ahead, sometimes you're behind. The race is long. And in the end, it's only with yourself. That's Mary Smitch. But also, somewhere in the comments here, somebody mentioned, and I want to say this in the most genuine way possible about Doug. Doug is done doing podcasts. He has no interest in doing any more of them. I have been as torn as any person could be about ending doing the podcast, mostly because it's awesome and because sitting with Doug, we talked about all that great stuff, right? It's always been awesome. And so if you go find We Got Nets on Substack, you may get alerted to potentially some other things that'll be going on. It's never going to be 5 days a week again. It's never going to be in the same kind of format that it's been in. But I did want to leave the door open to at least stay connected to this community. But again, if you start talking about not knowing what to do and all the problems of having too many good players, I will shut down the feed immediately and you will never hear from me again. That's a firm policy that I'm coming in with.
There was something I was thinking before. I was like, and I can't remember what it was. I was like, oh, if I had known this, I would have like maybe stayed on the podcast. Now I can't remember what it was. Anyway, but no, I hope that maybe we get the itch to do a little something. I'm sure Adam probably has a slightly higher. What is it? Higher itch? What is it? You have a more of an itch? Probably just more.
I have an itch, and I'm more inclined to scratch it. Maybe we both have itches. I don't know, but that could be more dermatology. I don't know. That's a different kind of conversation, probably.
Oh, straight and trading for SGA. There's a Team Canada connection. I seems totally. If we're just being in the realistic zone, I mean, might as well just do it. Jordy coached them. Probably likes them. Just fine. OKC seems like they're just gonna roll their way to the they're just gonna roll their way to the championship here. So they're absolutely just destroying teams. But yeah, what were you gonna say?
What I was gonna say was because I do want to turn to. We said we want to like give our outlook for what we think is going to come, right? For the Nets organization over the next handful of seasons before we part. But making that last couple of goofy comments, it cast my mind back. We did some of our first episodes when we were like starting the YouTube channel in its infancy in the previous iterations while we were in Bali with family and all those things. And well, my holy king, don't shoot down the dream before it even starts. I mean, come on.
This is my favorite. This is my favorite. It's like, oh, you don't think so?
Yeah, but I appreciate my holy king. You know why? That's blunt honesty. I don't care if you're joking, if you're being sincere, whatever it takes. My holy king comes in and says, "Listen, buddy, I got to shut that down right now."
Sorry, I stopped you. You're saying something nice. Go ahead.
No. I just like there was in the previous iteration before you get onto a network, and there's a little bit more structure, and we've always been dedicated to what we do. But when we were doing it freelance, effectively, there was buddy. I got to tell you, I went back and watched some of the tapes. First of all, I think we look as good as we ever did. And second of all, I think there was a looseness. There was a looseness and a carefree attitude about what we were doing in our WGN days. That was something to savor. I tapped back into that time machine and loved sitting around sweating bullets in Bali with a breezy banner in the background, having a heck of a time. Just a little memory to throw in there for the people.
I'll say this. I think we said this on one of the episodes a couple weeks ago or a month ago, whenever we first announced it. The first episode had my wife doing the voiceover. She did it in a closet, and when I was living in Mexico, and we just couldn't get anywhere quiet. We were just living like
she didn't need to go in the closet. Doug said, "Please go in the closet."
I was like, "Get in the closet," so it's quiet. So she recorded like the welcome to we got Nets at the time. So that was done from a closet in there. I think I might have recorded that first episode in a closet too, because I was so crazy about wanting there to be like no sound in the background, and the microphones just picked up everything, and you're just living in a place. So I was like, I think talk about hot. It was like the air conditioning couldn't keep up. It was Mexico in the middle of summer. It was like July in Mexico. It's 1,000 degrees, no AC. The AC can barely keep up, and I'm just like locked in this closet because I was dedicated to the craft, baby. Like dedicated to the craft at the time. To make sure that it was just going to be super, super quiet, because I was doing podcasts for other stuff at the time. So I just knew like what kind of boondoggle it could be if there was sound in the back. So anyway, that's where it started. Here we are. I'm just here. Here we are. I got my window in the background, and I got I don't even have the green screen up anymore. So we've come along.
So much less care in the world than we did even in those early days. Saint, man, shout out to him. Everybody knows him and the content that he put out. They used to be doing all, and they still do, but I was on some of their at one point. I was hopping on post game lives with them on Twitter, over on the YouTube channel as well. He was one of the early guys, had some really great like private messages as well. Just good exchanges around hoops and around building projects like this. And that's awesome, man. I'm just I like seeing people like that. And by the way, when you do this for the time that we have, like I started realizing, I'm like, I've known a lot of these people for like 5-6 years. Like, you've had these casual conversations with people for years and years, which has been really cool. Speaking of years and years, if we're talking about the Brooklyn Nets, and they're coming into this draft and they have 4 first-round picks, and they pick all of them. Like, let's not get crazy with it, right? And then they have more picks going forward. Paint the picture. Like, I know that Doug Norrie believes it's going to be a long timeline. But we turn around and entering the 3rd season from now, right? So you get this draft class, you get next year's deep at the top draft class, and then you're going into that year. You have 5 new players, young, highly drafted players. Do we think the Brooklyn Nets will be in a place where like they can be back? They're in the back end of the playoffs, like they're competing to kick in the door. Maybe they're got a little bit of like Detroit kind of vibes, but with way better personnel, because I don't think their roster is built out organically. The OKC model, right? Like that buildup happens quick. Like OKC came on pretty fast from where they were to where they are right now, going to an NBA Finals. Do we think that's achievable for Brooklyn?
I mean, it's achievable for sure. The one, so I think here's the best case scenario. The best case scenario is that they nail this version of the draft. They tank next year, which I still think they're going to do, and then they kind of spike top of the lottery next year and get like a real guy, like a Boozer, a Benasta. I say the name every wrong. Like one of these guys at the top, and then they have enough like homegrown stuff that then packaging pieces later looks a lot better, right? Because you're like, okay, we can, and I don't think that's going to be a Giannis. I think it's going to be two superstars from now who we're not thinking about
yet, maybe.
Yeah, like some other guy that's just not happy with his situation, not one of the current group of guys. Like like it's not going to be this, but it's like Paolo Banchero is upset at the Magic not getting far enough. And now he's like all of a sudden says that New York's his favorite place. Like someone like that. And everyone's like, well, no, he's happy with the Magic. I get it. 3 years
Kate Cunningham. Kate Cunningham.
Like
right? Like
one of these guys. Like someone like this.
Right? Yeah.
Exactly. Right. It's gonna be that group. That group Anthony Edwards, right? Like it's just all of a sudden Minnesota, they're on year 5 of that thing. It's just not working. One of these guys, no one pictures it now because these guys aren't on their ask out timeline. But as we know from the NBA, you get on to that ask out timeline eventually. So like it doesn't take no one sees it coming.
Extension, and then slowly work your way towards the I'm not so happy timeline.
So I think the best version of the Nets is this. It's this season draft goes really, really well. Pain next year, but come out of that with a high pick. Just have something go right. Then have that group, this like sort of aligned group. By the way, Clowney and Whitehead are on these same timelines because of how young they are. They're on that. Yep. They're all kind of just parallel, all the same timelines. And you have a group of 5 that you can like really see something not dissimilar to like what the Pistons did this year, where it's like, okay, now all of a sudden things start coming together. Cade is kind of hitting his stride. Duran's looking good. Oscar looks like he can play in the playoffs. Like, okay, so that's some homegrown talent. They kind of surrounded it with some vets just to kind of make the money work. Tobias Harris, Tim Hardaway Jr., guys like that. And now all of a sudden it's like a pretty fun team. Now they're gonna have to do something else to get like to the next level. It's like the Pistons would be like the version I think you would want to see. It's like a few, and they were even without Jaden Ivey. Few things work out. It looks pretty good. We surround it with some veterans, and if we really need to make a move, maybe the Knicks have imploded at that point, and those Knicks picks are looking even better. And now you can kind of like start compiling that stuff together. And a few of these other young guys have worked out. So maybe you can package one of them in for a superstar. I think like that's pretty doable, but it's like 3 or 4 years though. Like that's the only thing. It's like that kind of timeline is 3 or 4 years because you kind of need to pay a guy. He needs to be okay. You got to package the picks later. You need to have a few other guys work out. And then you start consolidating stuff later. But I think we're looking, it's like kind of wake me up in 3 years. It's a hard thing to do, but I think that's like a very realistic path to success though.
Yeah, it's funny too, because of the way that the picks break down where they have the 4 in this year and then they have the 1, but it's their own next year. And then 2027, right? Where you pick it up from the Knicks, talk about protected 1 through 8 from Philly, and then their own in 2027. And so to your point, almost just in terms of like, hey, getting enough good talent to have a problem, to make those difficult decisions, to maybe package them together. Once you get through that draft, I'll say that on draft night, you'll have to wait and see how they all turn out. But on draft night of the 2027 draft class, combined with what you do this year and where you land next year with that 1 pick, you could be talking about, we have these 5 players from 25 and 26. Now we could add in 3 more players, right? Now all 8 of those guys are not going to be stud cornerstone pieces, but enough there that then if you end up making that package swing that you talk about, then you still get to say, hey, in my back pocket, I have 2 picks in 2029. I have 2 picks in 2031, plus our own picks going forward, right? So much we talked about, and it's been a while since we've, discussed it, of getting back control of your own picks. I know, and then Houston and all, where everything landed and who ended up working out a little bit better after the Nets finally did the right thing, and it still didn't totally work out the way they hoped. But now you get to make these decisions and always say, and we have our own pick in 2028, 2029, 2030, 2031. So that as you make these big swings, I think with a lesson that Sean marks, because guess what? it could be 2065. Sean Marks is the GM of the Brooklyn Nets. He
Oh,
can
for
always
sure.
come back to, I won't do that. I won't sacrifice my own pick again, maybe at all cost in some regard, right? Like you'll have to really be talking about the pinnacle of pinnacle moves to put my own picks on the line potentially, because things do fall apart, because you do need to rebuild, and the structure of the NBA kind of dictates that. You need to have picks in your own pipeline to replenish things now with the way contracts work, because it's going to be harder and harder to compile all this money together. And then, as a lot of teams deal with, break it apart. Right, Boston has to figure out some weird things as they go forward with their money. It's a happy problem to have if you've had their success, but it still exists. So I think it's really interesting the way these next couple of years pan out for them.
These teams that don't have their picks are just so screwed. Like you get so screwed if you don't have your picks. And I get wanting to do it. And we voted to do the Harden trade at the time. So like I'm not even saying that was the wrong thing to do, but you are all in at that point. You can't go back. Like once you sacrificed your own picks, like you really have no outs. Like you just have to hope everything goes right. That's why OKC is in such an incredible spot, because they have all their own picks and kind of like everyone else's picks and a championship core that looks like it's going to win. Like they have just absolutely done it. The one thing the Nets haven't done that needs to kind of go right in this is that all these teams that got to this level, where I'll just use the 4 Eastern Conference teams now, but even just include the finals teams from the last couple of years, is you do need to have a guy. We found out that he probably doesn't need to be a top 5 guy, like we said in the past, but he needs to be like top 10-ish. You need to have like at least one legit guy that we would call a superstar. Never mind. Forget where we rank the guys. You just have to say superstar next to their name. Brunson, superstar. Halliburton, superstar. Ant, superstar. And who's the other? Oh, and Shea, obviously. So, and then like last year, it's like Luka, obviously, Tatum, obviously. Like these guys and I think Halliburton is probably the guy, maybe Brunson too, was the guy sitting at like the very edge of, are these guys good enough to be the best players on a championship team? Well, guess what? That's going to be answered, because one of those 2 guys is going to be on a team that's in the championship. So that one is solved. So I think it's like, as long as we can say, I think now we can back out how high of a level of guy you need to have, at least in this current iteration. You don't need to have a top 5 guy. It felt like that for a while. You don't need that anymore, but you need to have a guy that you would label a superstar, and then you need to just be awesome across the board. Like, and that's what these teams have right now. They have like really no weak links. Like they have Pacers just throwing 5 guys out there. They can get to 6 or 7, and you just feel pretty good about them playing like rotation minutes. Knicks are pretty much there. Sorry, the Knicks are there at 6 guys, I would say. Even 7 if you count Deuce. Clearly OKC is easily, right? Like they can kind of mix and match, and their defense is just unbelievable. And then I would say the same with Minnesota, and they just ran into an absolute buzzsaw in OKC. But these teams were like very well balanced. They were deep enough when it comes to playoffs, like playoff deep. And I think that's the way you need to. So that where the Nets are the farthest away right now, they're not the furthest. They're not going to be the furthest away, I think, in overall, like just good hot, like floor raising talent. I think they have enough chances to get there. Where it's going to take some luck is having the guy. Like, who's the guy going to be? Because that one you can't really see right now. Like, they don't really have. They're not going to get that guy, at least as it's structured right this season, or it's going to take some years, or it's just not projected. Anyone they draft here is like not projected to be that way. Again, I know what everyone's going to say. SGA was taken like 11th. Brunson was taken like, 278th or whatever. Halliburton, I know he was not. Halliburton was like 11th or I think, or 9th or 11th or something like that. And then Ant obviously was number 1. But so these guys can come from other parts of the draft, no doubt. And that's got to make Nets fans feel pretty good too, right? Like that these guys are all over the draft where they came from. And it took some years for them to kind of get developed that way.
Oklahoma City, who has 2 picks in this year's draft class, they have their own in 26, plus via Philly projected 1 through 4, from Utah projected 1 through 8. They have 2 more in 2027 from LA. Clippers have the right to swap, from Denver. I'm just rattling these off to remind everybody. The team that is likely and will be favored to win an NBA championship still has multiple draft picks of their own and from other teams out into infinity, and that is such the sweet spot. And by the way, so just to the point here from a Nets fan, about the idea of trading out of 26 or 27 and backing one of those picks up into next year's draft class potentially. Like, the value in doing something like that is, again, just keep it rolling. And if you draft these guys and some of them hit and you start to see some progress, just keep the ball rolling. And every year that you have 2 or 3, when you get to 2027, talk about maybe trading one of those out, right? Like, because you will come up against the good problem of maybe paying some guys, starting to head down the road or bringing in some money. You're going to want to shuffle it around a little bit. When you have as many picks as OKC's had, they've been able to be flexible in it. Right now, that's what Brooklyn should have, is flexibility. And one of the things I think that I'll throw into like the projection of the next few years is youth movement, staying the course. I saw My Holy King say, not Jonathan Kuminga talks, not Giannis talks, like stay away from these guys right now. And those are different type of players, obviously. But is once you have the core, that you feel like you've checked the boxes on a few of these guys, I think there's also the version where, the Jalen Brunson, route here. And I don't mean the guy that turns out to explode on a team-friendly contract, but just, hey, we like that guy over there. And that team, for their own reasons, isn't going to be able to keep him around. Maybe they don't want to go the extra dollar. We're going to bring him in. And I'm not saying it vaults the Nets into Eastern Conference final conversations, but it starts to become a different look when you can say, maybe we just sign some guys. We don't have to give up the assets for them. Make the team a little bit better. Keep some of the young talent, right? And start to cycle through it a little bit. Like, I think we'll see that growth curve where all the 20 and 21-year-olds, as they become 22, 23, 24, you can maybe start taking a shot at sprinkling in a couple of like 26, 27-year-old veterans that maybe start to move that needle a bit for you. Like, that's how I think you build it healthy without having to commit to a big swing. You still need that player to come, but enough draft picks. I'd like to think that whether it's the 8th pick or the 26th pick, one of these guys in this year's draft class is going to be a cornerstone piece. Same thing between next year and 2027. One of those guys is going to be a cornerstone piece. Now you got 2 guys, and now you start to just build out around it, right? Like, that's the dream. I know it's a long view, but like, it should be fun. Like, I like the idea. This is exciting. We talked about, like, what are we going to miss out on? Draft night. It's going to be insanely exciting to see these guys get their name called for Brooklyn and just start to think about what they can become.
Yeah, I've said this a bunch that I don't really have regrets about leaving, but I'm going to come draft night. I'm definitely gonna miss it. My thing just got a little blurry. I'm gonna wish on draft night.
It's not blurry. Those are your eyes. Those are called tears.
What's that? Yeah, no, I'm gonna wish on draft night that I was there or that we were there, because I think that is just gonna be a very, very cool night. But in general, yeah, I think like you're saying something that makes a lot of sense. It's like, I think that like they're going to have the ability to get one of these free agents. I think that we've discounted this idea around the geographic advantage that Nets have, because they haven't been in a place where they've been able to really take advantage of it. Because I think they did take advantage of it with Durant and Irving for sure. Like, they took advantage of a geographic thing. And there just haven't been and I guess Harden too, because Harden wanted to come here. I think like that stuff mattered. I think it's harder for Nets fans to kind of see that now, because like Knicks are so good and it's gone so bad, but the New York thing is still going to work in their advantage for years and years and years and years. Like, that's always going to be something in their favor. And the more flexibility, they have, the more flexibility they have, the more you're going to see that the New York thing does matter for this team. Like, again, it has not been something that we've seen lately, because there's just been like no avenues for it to really come about. But as the years go on, the New York thing, like, as opposed to a team like Charlotte, which is just always going to need the draft well, because they're just not going to go. Free agents just aren't going to go there. Guys aren't going to ask to be traded there. The Nets will always have an advantage of being in New York City, even as like the second best team, the second most popular. They'll never eclipse the Knicks in popularity, but it still like won't matter, because all the other stuff does help. Like the nightlife, and by the way, the culture,
one of the most profitable franchises as it is right now. Like the Brooklyn Nets organization is doing great, even if you don't spike that popularity, piece when it comes to New York and being the team in the city, right? Like, we get that, but you can still be perfectly successful. And by the way, just to your point, you talk about, when Kyrie signed. Listen, if Kyrie Irving had signed in Charlotte, there's not a guarantee that Kevin Durant was like, oh, I want to play with my friend Kyrie, so I'm going to go to Charlotte and play with him. Maybe. Because KD seems like that kind of guy. But it was like, oh, we want to play together, and you went to Brooklyn, which is in New York, and that's a good vibe in the East Coast. Like, okay, yeah, I do want to come do that. So I think, just to your point, like, it only takes having the one guy that everybody would like to play with, that is one of those top talents, to all of a sudden attract somebody to make that kind of decision. days are gone of just a free agent walking out the door and, wanting it maybe. But I don't know. That's what's fascinating about the new structure when it comes to the money in the NBA, because maybe there will just come this push or shove where not the elite superstars are superstars, but some of those high second tier dudes just kind of hit the market because there's an understanding about the dollars and cents of these deals and whether or not you can do the sign and trade and get assets from other people. But, some of these organizations are going to stand pat and say, you blink first, because I don't need to come get this guy right now. And we know the problem it'll create for you if you don't make a hard decision.
And I really think that like every year we try to change our ideas about like what works in the NBA and what doesn't. And sometimes it can just be luck and injuries and just like whatever else. I'm telling you right now, either the Pacers or the Knicks making the finals is going to change how some teams think about like what it means to get there. Like now, again, some of it's luck. Like Tatum gets hurt. Boston was probably going to lose anyway. But like Tatum gets hurt. Staps looked like he was dead. I don't know what was going on with him. Maybe they were just out of gas. Like I'm not really sure. Feels a little weird. But like, yeah, but that's going to happen every year. Every year there's going to be like wackiness that happens or injuries or just whatever. And that's just going to happen. And I think that if you're a team and you're looking at this and you're like, oh man, like guys like Brunson or Halliburton can be our best guys and we can get to the finals, especially in the East. The East is going to be a joke next year. Like Tatum's going to be out of it. Cleveland will be good again. Like Bucks, if Giannis stays, like there's not going to have Lillard. It's going to be hard to imagine how they're like awesome. Detroit, I think, will be right in it. Detroit's got to be feeling great about going into next year. Like, I think Magic, if they get everyone back healthy, have to be feeling pretty good about it. Like, there's some other teams that are going to look at this and be like, we don't need to upgrade at the superstar level. We need to upgrade to make sure that we're just a complete team. Yep. Like, if the Magic were like, if Suggs wasn't hurt and we had just like one more guy who could like sort of play point guard, they could have gone to the finals, maybe. Like, so I just think these teams are going to look at this situation and say balance is like what kind of wins. We need to have a requisite like talent level. We need to be above a certain threshold. All of our guys need to be above a certain threshold. If we can't have any, everyone's got to be able to do something. You can't just like hide Thabo Cephalosha in the corner anymore and hope to win. Like that's just not going to work anymore. Like,
and people know this, but it's a really good point to make. Like that's where the NBA has gone to. There is no more hiding guys. Like either you can do it or you can't, and it needs to be.
You can't stand PJ Tucker. You can't stand PJ Tucker in the corner anymore, and have Harden just dribble 50 times, and then like that's just not going to work anymore. So knowing that, it actually is going to devalue some of these guys, like the PJ Tuckers. I'm trying to use these avatars of guys who like kind of did. Now he was awesome at what he did. He could guard like fives. He was small. He could kind of switch 1 through 5. And he would make every corner 3 as long as he was standing there open. And
probably
he couldn't do anything else.
As everybody else gets more athletic, he wouldn't be able to defend the same way that he did, 10 years.
Yeah, you just hide your worst defender on it. You hide your worst defender on that guy, and you just make everyone else work. And so, like, now you see these teams where kind of like most guys can get the ball at the end of the shot clock at least a little bit, right? Like, everyone in the Knicks pretty much – right? Yeah. Everyone on the current starting 5 of the Knicks can get the ball at the end of the shot clock. Now, you'd rather have it be Brunson and then Cat, but like everyone else can kind of have it and you're not totally dead. Like same with the Pacers pretty much, right? Yeah. Like, and so all these teams are like standing in this place where you need to have a requisite talent. They all need to be pretty good at everything. And then you need to have a couple guys who are just great. But like the old version where you would just hide some dude and it just kind of worked out fine because someone else was hiding their worst guy too, right? And
right. Hey, like that's the old playing soccer growing up, and you just stand kind of off the side of the field with the other guys. Other teams worth playing. Go, hey man, we catch some butterflies out here. They blow the whistle for halftime. We all get orange slices. All good.
Yeah, but now you watch soccer and you're like, everyone's awesome. Like it's like you watch soccer now, like even at lower levels, you're like, oh, great news. Everyone is so sick. Like I played soccer in college, right? Okay, so like, and I thought I was decent. And I look around at high schools now. I'm like, forget it. These guys are so far above. Like they're so far above. I'm being serious. Like I thought I was decent at the time. I was good enough to play at college, not like a great college or anything, but good enough to play in college and play like a good position. And I look at it now. I'm like, oh, we would get freaking smoked by like a U15 team or something like that. And I think the NBA is coming to that realization too on some level, where it's like you just can't. You're only as good as your weakest link at this point. It's not you're not as good as your superstar anymore. You're as good as your weakest link on the court that's playing. And I think like it's not perfect science, but I think that's got to make the Nets feel pretty good about going into the future with these picks, because it just means stay the course and draft as many guys as you can get and build like an incredible baseline, and just hope that one of these guys kind of gets there and know that the talent level across the board is going to be good enough.
Yeah, I think you're right. And by the way, not that we talk a lot about it. Again, it's like, old man shouting at the clouds kind of conversation around, the way the game has looked and the way it's evolved and it's not as physical and all those silly kind of things. But what I will say is as it's moved into this more athletic era, it's not at its peak of that version yet, I don't think. As in, I think we'll get to a place where once it is, basically every team knows they kind of got to get to that point of having guys that can do everything to the different degrees. Then you start to get into real battles. Then it is like positional battles across the board. No matter where you move the ball, it's going to be some type of enticing, intriguing matchup. And that's where some of these guys we talk about, the older kind of guard, start to fall off because you just can't hang. And that does make for less exciting basketball if you're watching a handful of blow-bys and dudes that, I hate to call it a Brooklyn net, but it's like, when Day'Ron Sharpe doesn't quite move fast enough and picks up 4 fouls in 6 minutes, you're like, yeah, that's kind of what we're talking about. You need to be a certain mold to be able to hang on and to really thrive in the NBA as well. That being said, that means there's no better time to be having 4 players like this, 4 draft picks to be able to bring them in, right? And another 4 picks over the next 2 years as well. Brooklyn's in a great position. I think, Doug, unless you like to shout anybody out, everyone's in here. We've had a great run. We've had a heck of a time. We're closing in on an hour. And I think that's about the time for the journey. I open up to the forum for closing thoughts. Biggest regrets from the podcast. Remember that time you said that thing and we clipped it out? Like you got lucky, but I think we mostly avoid some of the pitfalls.
No regrets. This has been fun. We've had an incredibly fun time to do it. We sat down 6 years ago, something like that, and said, let's do this thing. Probably you and I knew each other from not on the podcast, and still know each other from not on the podcast. And we were like, hey, this would be a fun thing. This would be fun to do. I'm looking for something like sort of a new project to just kind of have a passion, be a passion project. And if it goes somewhere, it goes somewhere. And we'll just kind of do it that way. You were game for it. And I knew one thing, which was how to like get a podcast feed going. And that was about it.
It was a bit, an important part though, the process. I'll tell you that right now. That was pretty crucial.
And knew how to do the write-ups and knew how to do the titling. And like, that's kind of all you needed to do at the beginning to like, just do a podcast. But regret-wise, no, man, it's like been a lot of fun. One thing I never expected to happen was, well, I knew that you and I would do a good job of like talking basketball, and you and I liked each other enough to like know that talking about it would be fun. So I was actually like never worried about that part. What I've been blown away by is like the people that are in this YouTube channel here, the unbelievable, what's it called? Response that we got when we said we were going off. Someone said something to me on Twitter and I feel terrible.
I got to hold on. Yeah.
I responded to it. Give me 2 seconds. Vamp for 2 seconds while I find it. I'm going to get it here.
No, because it has been absolutely, I mean, to just Doug's point, right? It's been incredible. And when you point to the people in the room, like, I mean, it is sincere.
Oh, I got it.
Talking about, that aspect of fans and interaction and that sincere support. I hope this is the one that we're talking about. If not, I can double down and possibly beat you with one of these. Go ahead.
My daughters, this is from Sauce Castillo over on Twitter. He said, my daughters made this hit home. Tuesday, they said your voices are part of their childhood. And, it's funny about this. Like, one thing we never know, and I said this after we made the announcement, and I'll say it again here now. When you talk and do a podcast, and silly dude, we're talking about the freaking Nets. This isn't like world peace. We're not solving any of the world's problems. Like, no one's gonna, this isn't going in the Library of Congress, and they're not going to put it in. They're not going to put it in the time cap. They're not going to put it in the time capsule so that our future ancestors can find, the things that made our culture, kind of like be our culture. But when you do something like this, what you're unsure of beyond the numbers, because you can see the numbers, what you're unsure of is who is listening. People are listening, but you're unsure who is listening, and you're unsure about like what they're doing with it, right? Like, or where they're listening, or like where it like, what part of their day they're listening, or like what part of it is their routine
into other spaces of their life, right? Yeah.
What part of it's their routine? What part of it is the thing they do every day? Who they listen with? Those are the things you're just like not privy to. Frankly, no one tells you, and they shouldn't. I don't reach out to the people whose podcasts I listen to. Is like, thanks for the good gym sesh today, Scott Galloway or like whatever. Like, I just listen, and then I just go about and do the rest of your stuff. it usually never comes up until there's like some sort of like defining moment around. So what we've heard, and I know Adam has heard it too, what we've heard over the last month or so is like the times when people listen, or the people they listen with, or that it made them think about something differently. This sometimes the unfortunate thing about like life is that you aren't, and this is actually frankly what happens at funerals, unfortunately, and people aren't around to hear it, is that you're unsure about the impact you have because no one is ever incentivized to tell you the impact until they know it's over. Because up until that point, it's just part of what they're doing. So I think for me, the thing I'm surprised most about, or like grateful the most for, is that that there was people listening out there and they made it their routine, and that people had the wherewithal to kind of like say something as we're leaving. Like that's the thing that I think has been the coolest thing. That makes it hard on that level. But yeah, that's my big takeaway, is that like I appreciate everyone that came along and was like, hey, thanks. I listened at the gym, on my car ride, with my kids, with my wife. These are all guys, by the way. Not a single female rang in with anything. I
think there were a couple of females that said couldn't recite a single word you guys ever spoke, but I did hear you in the background from my husband frequently.
Well, my wife, as we all know, my wife never listened to a single episode, and
she's not even entirely sure that you're on a podcast. If I'm being totally
so anyway,
clear.
I'll land it with this. I'm appreciative of everyone that came out and said when they did and what it meant to them, and that means a lot to me, and I'll keep that forever. And like I said, it won't get stored in a time capsule, but it's something I'll never forget.
What drove home to that point was that my niece and nephew, my twin niece and nephews, weren't alive when we started doing this. My older nephew was, but so we mentioned daughters. It was like, yes, like that's how much life has changed, and that was something we talked about. You know, when just why you stop doing a podcast? Things change, and you have new adventures and new things that you want to take on. But that part of it was just crystallizing, as well as watching the old podcast. And frankly, we did look younger and thinner and all those great things. But yeah, like you said, I mean, I said it before, tongue in cheek, about like no, regrets. No, there's no regrets. I said it before, and I'll reiterate it, that like this was like the easiest, most fun, professional job like that I got paid to do that I've ever had in my life, and there's a very good chance that it will never be surpassed. I'll go on to do other awesome things and great things, and I'm super excited about it. But this version of this thing in this time frame of my life has been awesome, and it's because of all the fans that showed up and all the awesome conversations we've had. It's because of doing it with someone like Doug. That was very easy. I've had other interactions with other people on podcasts where I go, oh my God, there's a real world where I just shut down the feed mid podcast rather than endorse some of these things. So those things matter. And I think that I've always enjoyed people reflecting on our camaraderie, our rapport that we have on the show. It's genuine. And I thought that always came through with everything that we did too. So this has been really cool. There will be other, avenues to hear what I have to say about it. You'll still, by the way, shameless plug, because Doug would never do it. Go follow Doug Norrie on Substack. How about that? It's not about basketball, but it's a hell of a good read. He's doing a lot of cool stuff over there. That's a part of the next phase of the adventure. As you guys do other things than just talk Brooklyn Nets basketball, so do we. It's been really, really cool, man. Appreciate everybody. And with that,
yeah, this has been fun. Always tough to say goodbye, but the podcast is in good hands with Eric. So Eric Slater starting on Monday. Maybe someone will prop their head back up, but Eric's got to. I'm really glad the transfer of the feed is going to Eric. It's really, really, really in good hands. Yeah. So we will say this: the number one way you can help the Locked On Nets podcast, you subscribe over on YouTube, you subscribe over on Spotify, you subscribe on wherever you listen. And I'm going to say this for Eric, because he's a professional. He's not going to say this. So I'm going to say this one last time. Once you've subscribed, go to everyone in your house, get their accounts, subscribe from their emails. If you need to hire out a bot farm in some other country to go make it, do it. Do it. Burner phones. Go get these numbers up for Eric right now. We do not care how you do it. I mean, legal. It's all legal. Get as many accounts as you can. Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, all free for you. Number one way you can help the show.
Wow. Close it out like a pro. I knew he always would. And let me just leave you with this, my friends. Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? And that is Mary Oliver.
One of the all-time great poets. Eric will be back on Monday talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.
Basketball, 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 basketball. Yeah.
All right, buddy. We did